Hi Simone, thank you for sending your animation over. So let's get to it. As a first thing, I think that there may be something improvable in the way you address feedback. I think possibly is it possible that you're not taking notes as you watch the feedback video? Because some of the stuff that I suggested is not addressed in here, and I'm not sure if it's because you're not taking notes or because you don't think it needs addressing or because you haven't addressed it yet. So I think you were mentioning on Discord that you won't move forward until the arcs are fixed, which I understand, it makes sense. But I'm not sure if you haven't addressed part of the feedback because you didn't notice, because you didn't take notes or whatever. So, well, I will tell you my approach to feedback. My approach to feedback is, as I watch a video about feedback or I'm in a daily, I take notes about what needs fixing on which frame, even if there's a recorded video, because I don't really want to go through an hour-long video to know what was wrong. I just need to get the message there and leave the room knowing what the client wants, what the supervisor wants, what I want, what went wrong, and what needs improving. Okay, so as you watch the feedback, open up your book, write down on which frame there's which problem and what's the proposed solution, if any. And if there's no proposed solution, you write down, think about it, okay? You write down what the problem is, and knowing the problem is half the solution. So speaking of stuff that I think isn't particularly addressed is the arc of the lower body. It feels like the lower body is going down for a couple of frames in this direction, and then it starts going up diagonally, and then it goes up, down, back horizontally. So if anything, it almost looks like this thing isn't really much better than before, and it doesn't feel like the arc is struck there. I mean, you don't need to make a swiping arc out of everything, of course, in animation, and sometimes you don't even need those kind of arcs anyway, but in here it feels like you could be a bit more curvy in your approach to arcs there. Your decision anyway. I'm just noting down what I noticed, and since it's from a previous feedback, I still have that opinion that you would need a better arc in there. However, I can see you overshot, and I think it looks better if you overshot. The other thing, which there's a thing I don't quite understand yet, which is, let me just go to the previous iteration of this thing on frame 29. So I don't understand why on your previous iteration we had such a clear, nice pose on the face where you could see both the eyes and the eyebrows very clearly, and why in this new iteration the face became a single-eyed thing and the eyebrows are now less visible. I think once we found a pose that works, unless there's a reason to change it, we shouldn't really be changing it. Or rather, you can tweak it, but you cannot change the nature of the pose. And if the nature of the pose was that you had two eyes there and the eyebrows visible, then if you make a new pose where you have, I don't know, the eyebrow now is a lot crunchier, so it gets confused as a silhouette, and you have a single eye in the middle there and the nose. These two poses, I mean, I know that you think, well, it's the same character for sure. I can guarantee you this is not the same character. This is a cyclope, and this guy is a person with two eyes. Okay, so they're not the same thing at all. And this is especially true if then the other eye appears again. You're just confusing the audience. The problem is that, I mean, in real life, if a person turns this way and you see a single eye, it sort of makes sense. But in real life, you have much longer times to observe stuff than you do in animation. Animation, I mean, this whole thing lasted for just 1 second until now. So it's a bit, if out of 1 second your character becomes one with one eye and a half, then one with two, and then one with one eye only in just 1 second, and you have 3 characters in 1 second. That's a bit too much, I think. And all this while everything else is moving down there. I just think that's a bit too much motion, and it would be a lot clearer if you kept the 2 eyes there. Okay, that's the general rule anyway. If you want to go full profile, you need to have a reason in 3D or even in animation, and it's usually a stylistic reason to go. There's usually a stylistic reason to go full profile. Otherwise, we prefer, even for a profile shot, we prefer to see both eyes. So in animation, profiles really most of the times are 3/4, which we move as close to profile as possible without losing both the eyes. Okay, so that's sorted. And then the other note that I gave last time I think it wasn't addressed, is that the eyebrows were crunchy, and I said, can we not leave them crunchy for a couple of frames longer, or 1 frame longer, so that we actually read it, and so that when they change expression in here, we read the change of expression, because now you change the expression when you're also moving a lot with the head, meaning the audience will see the whole thing moving, but it will have troubles reading within the shape. So if you want it to be easier for the audience to read within the shape, delay the opening of the eyebrows or anticipate it so that it falls in an area of the time where the head moves less. Okay, so that's the same feedback as before. Now, the other problem that you have from before is, I said before, can we not have the, I said the leg is competing with the head in terms of attention, of catching the attention of the audience. And right now, it turns out that the leg is competing with the head. The head is competing with the leg in terms of catching the attention of the audience. And it seems to me that this is more of a technical error than technical glitch than a decision, because if you check this view, you can see the knee, and the next frame the knee goes here, and the next frame it goes down to the ankle there. So it seems like the knee is, you are operating some sort of length of the thigh there, which probably is a mistake or an oversight. I don't think it's a decision there. I mean, there is no reason for such a tiny movement to the lower part of the body towards the floor. There doesn't seem to be a justification to have this massive bend in just 1 frame. Okay, so this stuff is stuff that was there from the previous feedback, and then we move on to the new stuff now. And in terms of arc tracking, everything works a lot better now. I just would like to make sure let's say that when you have an arc, the tendency in animation is to do a very continuous arc, but really imagine that you can stay there a bit and then start and then go down again. You don't have you don't need the animation to be evenly spaced. It could be something like we go at this speed and then we slow down and then we accelerate again, so that we give also the eye a bit of a moment to rest. Okay, you don't have to do it for every single piece of animation, but especially when everything moves on screen, it's usually a lot better to think about that stuff as well, because even if you look at your animation here, we can't quite make up what's going on there. Everything seems to be moving more or less at the same speed. So I think if you had a bit of a break on some limbs, it might look a bit better. Then track the elbow there, because the elbow is moving to the left very quickly, camera left, and then to the right very quickly, and then for 2 frames, and then to the left again. So it doesn't seem to be reacting to the motion of the body. In fact, if the body was moving that way, as the body was moving, I would expect the elbow to go camera left, and as the body stops, I would expect the elbow to pop out and then adjust again. Okay, that's what I would expect from the elbow. Instead, I see that kind of motion that doesn't look justifiable. The problem is that if it doesn't look justifiable from a physical standpoint, it's hard to understand, and if we don't understand, we can't believe. So it's just, that is the main issue there. So now let's check the arcs. So one note I gave during the last feedback was you can't jump without a kickoff pose, and you need a kickoff pose to jump. So in here, I still think we don't have a kickoff pose, because I would expect the tip to be pushing and the knee to and the heel to be up in there before we leave the floor, and instead we go from flat foot to foot in the air. So again, we don't have a kickoff pose. So I mean, it seems to me that maybe you're not taking notes as you watch the video. Maybe you tend to say, okay, I will refer back to the video, which, I understand where this comes from. If this is the case, it's very tempting to say, I have it on video, I don't need to really worry about taking notes, but it doesn't work that way. Your memory doesn't work that way, and I wouldn't want to go through a half an hour feedback video of mine just to see again if I missed something, because that would mean that just to check the feedback, I would have to go through it once for half an hour, and then another time for another half an hour. That means that before I even get to understand what's going on, 1 hour has passed by. Okay, so you want, as the video goes on, you want to press pause, write down the note, and then press play and go on. And once you're done, as I said earlier, you have a list of notes and you can work following that instead. Okay, videos are great, but notes are better. Okay, because watching videos is very time consuming, as we all know in these interesting times where we spend most of our time watching videos. So now kickoff pause, remember, and then the same thing goes in here on 41. Can we not have the tip of the foot flat on the floor instead of having it go into the floor? And then you can still lift the heel, right? I mean, it doesn't really make any difference to you. Then in terms of arcs, the biggest problem of this leg is this transition between 51 and 52, where the leg, I mean, let's track the middle line of the foot, and this is the weight. This point represents the weight we are dragging around with the heel there. Okay, so I'm going to try and track that middle line and track that weight. So you see what's going on there. You see that the heel is pointing in that direction, is dragging in that direction. The tip is, of course, that makes sense, being dragged behind. As the heel starts moving in a different direction, say down here, which is a bit too extreme in my opinion anyway, you would kind of expect the tip to be still traveling in that direction, would you not? And instead what we find out is that the tip has gone up there. The silhouette is entirely different in just one frame, and if that weren't enough, even the knee is completely different in just one frame. So you have complete inversion of an entire limb in just one frame. No anticipation about it, nothing, just it happens. I think that's too hard. I think that's too much for us to read. I think that what I would probably expect from the motion you started, let's put it down that way, is I would expect the heel to keep going up there. Perhaps the knee not to be inverted just yet there. And then I would probably expect the foot to be accelerated in that direction, and meaning that the tip will stay behind. Something like this, I suppose, and this, I guess this will be the middle line. And then I will go up there with the knee, and the heel, which was going up, could probably now, you could do something like this, I suppose. Could probably start going up, and then and drag the foot along. And then as it starts going down, go down a bit wider as a motion. And the foot will be, you can have the foot still oriented that way. Even you can even break the knee, sorry. And then as you touch the floor, you touch the, again, as I said in the previous feedback, avoid contact poses where you go from full up to full contact and there's just one frame and there's no flopping of the foot. I mean, yeah, in some cases you can probably do that, but for this kind of animation, the contact pose looks a lot better if the heel is on the floor and the tip is flying. So in here I would just put the foot there. I think I can even exaggerate the foot a lot more in there, and I can just put it almost vertical there. And then in 2 frames I can flop it down. And I think that would be a lot softer as a motion than the motion you have right now. I think it could even take a bit longer in terms of, you see that now the foot is actually tracking an arc, and it's a lot nicer, and you give the audience time to see how the foot changes shapes. It's just, I don't know, I just think it works better, but again, you decide. I'm just telling you that that motion is a bit strange. So then let's see what's next. So the left foot, as I said earlier on, I think you would need a clear kickoff before you leave the floor. And I'm not convinced about the arc. If this is the heel, since they suggest we're going that way, but then we're going that way, so your arc is this one. And then it's this one. But only for 2 frames, because after that you're going down that way. So this is your arc there. I don't know, I guess you could have it, but again, I mean, it seems to me that you would be better off opting for a lower arc there. And then starting, so something like this, and then starting moving up. And then start to come down again. So that means the knee will be a bit. And you really want to add some overlap to that foot as it comes down. And as you go after the passing pose in there, that definitely needs to be bent. Now I'm exaggerating this thing. I'm making some sort of peanut shape there, but just to show you what I mean. And then that means that when you go into the contact, which by the way I don't understand why you're pushing all the way to the right and then coming back on the left for the heel there. You see, you're pushing the contact to the right, but then you landing on the left. That doesn't quite make sense to me. I think you would either push a bit more on the left, stay a bit more on the left in here, or land a bit more to the right in there. So I was saying, in here, you would probably land with the foot still bent this way. And as you land, this is actually working quite nicely, I think. You flop the tip the other way. So that means there will be maybe one more frame in which the tip is still up, and then we go flat. And you see how it makes a lot more sense. It's just more natural. I mean, it's just more in line, I think, with the animation you're trying to do. Now let's have a look at the arms. I think the arcs of the arms are still confused, and this guy, I mean, as far as we perceive it, this guy is moving forward for 2 or 3 frames, and then once it's done, it goes vertically down. Look at that. So again, you need to track your arcs better and track this point to understand what goes on. So my suggestion here is I'm not quite sure that you want both fists to move at the same time. That looks like you had to keep posing. You just let Maya interpolate. That doesn't look good. So, I mean, and also you're crossing through the body with the left arm, just like that. I think it would be more reasonable if the left fist were a bit more outside, so that, I mean, you still have to go in front of the body. You still need to sort of go outside first, and that would also give you a different motion, because this guy would be going outside that way, that guy would go outside that way, and they wouldn't be tweening together in the same direction to the left of the screen. Which probably means that your arc would be coming this way, probably doing a tight turn, something like this. that way. And in here, if you look at your arc, you're going that way, right? I mean, so it seems. So I would expect the next frame to be somewhere over here. I mean, it could be higher or it could be somewhere over here, but it's down here. So now you're telling me to believe that this is the arc, and then it goes that way. So it's a bit strange. I would expect this pose to be a bit higher. And then if you're going that far down, perhaps the top of the hand, the bottom of the hand should be visible here. And this kind of rotation I don't quite understand. And then I don't understand how come the elbow is here and the next frame is here. I just don't get it. Sorry. So I think the elbow should probably be somewhere over here, if anything. And I still don't understand why you would go that far out. I mean, it's just not believable to me. I just think that's too much motion there. And the arc here at the end. Again, you're going down vertically so you're going essentially right for 2 frames or so, and then you're going a bit diagonally, and then you're going down vertically for 2 frames. So that's your arc there. And then you come back up vertically and you start going diagonally. So I just don't think that's working too well. I think you need to decide what this motion is. Take a decision. I'm not even going to suggest an arc in here because I don't know. I just don't know. You need to decide what's the motion in 3D. Do it yourself and see what's the motion you're doing, and do it in 3D the same way. Then you tend to start your animations on the same frame for all the limbs. That's true of here. Everything moves more or less the same amount, which is a note from the previous feedback that was also there. And here everything stops on the same frame. Oh, that's not even possible, I think. And also if you track the arc in here, the arc goes down and you have so much energy left on this one here that it's impossible to believe, for me at least, that you can stop in just 1 frame. That's just not true. So I think something like this should happen, or you decide if you want to do this or if you want to do this. So this or this, you decide, but you gotta, whichever way you go, you have to follow through with it, okay? Because it looks like the director said cut and that was it, and we cut and edit, but this motion has to finish. It has to deplete its energy or put it under control, whichever way you prefer. And the same goes for the right arm. It goes back at a certain speed. I would certainly expect it to bounce forward again or bounce down depending on the motion. And I think this could, you still have to decide which one or 2 arms finishes early, okay? And then there was another issue in the facial expressions, which, sorry, I just noticed now, for which in about 8 frames you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different expressions with 4 entirely different emotions. 8 frames is 1/3 of a second, and you have these many different emotions in here. That's a bit too much. I think you'd be better off if you took a decision there and told us we go from this pose to that pose and we go for a transition. That's it, because this is just too much stuff. I think one thing that you could do is you could land on the contact pose and still be wide open, and then as you go into the down you could perhaps compress, and then as you open up, say starting from frame 58, you could go to either the angry, starting from 58 you can start transitioning to either the angry expression or to the smart as one. But I would keep the angry or smart as one until the end. I wouldn't really keep on changing expression because it's just not clear what's going on there. And yeah, and the arcs for this arm also is confusing because it reads as if it's going vertically up and then come vertically down. So I think you need to decide what you want to do with that. My suggestion, the first try I would do probably would be to keep frame 52, and then on frame 54 put the arms in here so that it stays behind, and then I would start going down again, so you would have some sort of moving hold up there. That would be my first attempt. And then once you're done with this, you can do the tail. So that's it. Have fun.